tea in Oceanside. We paid a hefty fare for special perks. They brought a variety of dildos, strap-ons, beads etc. What turned out to be the most amusing prop they brought was the draldo. Long story short, the bachelor was draldoing one of the strippers in the ass. He sat in a chair. She bent over in front of him. He made the mistake of ripping it out of her too fast. She shot a nice mixture of sheet and lube all over his lap. He then proceeded to puke on himself. The rest of us about died laughing while my buddy sat in sheer terror at the thought and sight of what just happened. Guy ran a military obstacle course as the first stop on the bachelor party. Did the net climbing obstacle. When he dropped down on the other side, his ring had got caught in the net. He severed his finger. Not a bad thing necessarily. A friend of mine is a male stripper and legal to officiate weddings. More than once he's been called on to officiate a wedding where he met the bride the night before. As he tells it, the most awkward was when the officiate cancelled the night before. So the bride is at the bachelorette party stressed about getting a new officiate. He apparently negotiated the deal for that while naked. And they had an agreement that no one would ever tell the groom where she found him. Again. Not a worker. But the bride-to-be. Husband-to-be went out on his bachelor party with a small group. Mostly to get drinks, play poker and get him a lap dance at the local strip joint. About an hour in, he calls me. You will not believe this. On stage. Flicking her clit ring. Is his last ex. She calls him out by name and says hi. Mind you, the party consisted of my dad, my younger brother, his dad, and a couple guy friends. They very quickly went to the upstairs room for poker and drinks with no more talk of lap dances. That town was too ducking small. A top client of mine got blasted and gave me a rundown of his bachelor party. It started by drinking at a Vegas day club, where he met a few girls and hooked up with one of them. After that, a dinner with more drinks. His friends and him went to a strip club where they in total spent over $10,000. This allowed them access to money, gums and bricks of fake money. Towards the end, they just started throwing bricks at girls, which alarmed security. Also, when he paid, they forced him to sign the receipt the same was as his ID. Shockingly, according to this guy, nothing happened at the strip club but lap dances. Feeling let down, they drove to a brothel over an hour away and banged a few prostitutes there. It's now 3 AM, so they drove back to Vegas. Found a 24-hour massage parlor where he attempted to get a happy ending before they kicked him out. Apparently by then his junk was defunct. A few hours later he was at his wedding. They lasted a little over a year and split. Edit. Oh yeah. Earlier in the day he got caught with Molly in a club, but was able to convince the guard to let him go after showing his rewards card with the hotel. I was doing security at a club and a bachelorette party showed up, all wearing t-shirts that said tribe or something on them. They looked like they hadn't been out in a long time to the club, if ever, and quickly all got plastered. One of them stumbled into me, trying to make it to the bathroom, and I offered to help her get there. Since she could barely walk, she proceeded to let out an exuberant scream and flash her bobs, before promptly puking all over me and passing out. She fell backwards, breaking the first bathroom stall door in, and swinging it wide open, exposing a screaming girl pooping. It was like 11 PM. The night had just started. Obligatory, not a party worker. My friend held her bachelorette party the night before her wedding, and while at the club they met up with a local minor league hockey team. The bride-to-be tried to get the whole bridal party to go back to the hotel with them, but only the bride went. She ended up sleeping with at least one of them and got married to her fiance the next day. The kicker? She eventually told her now husband about it and now they're in an open relationship. She still hooks up with the hockey player from time to time. Was working as a bartender at a bachelorette party. The bride and one of the bridesmaids were dancing on top of the bar. Both slipped and I caught the bridesmaid before hitting the ground, but the bride hit her head and had a bad gash on her forehead and was bleeding pretty bad. Wrapped her head in a towel and rushed her to the hospital. The bride was fine, however had a bad scar on her head before the wedding. Drunken Brita maid that I saved yelled at me that I should have saved her, oddly enough. Got her apology text a couple of days later though, as I gave them my number if I need to be contacted for anything. A guy I worked with decades ago made a legit ball and chain to lock onto the groom's ankle. This was back when the bachelor party was the night before the wedding. They all got blotto drunk and lost the key. The groom walked down the aisle with that ball and chain on his ankle because they couldn't find a solution in time. At a bachelor party, and the stripper, while giving a lap dance to the groom, leaned over and bid my friend, who wasn't even paying attention. Now we say he's a were stripper, and every full moon he loses control and hits the red light district. Looking for once. Edit. Okay. I did something wrong somewhere. I don't need more people to point it out. Obligatory, not a worker. Was guest. No strippers or anything like that. I live in a remote farmers community. Everyone got drunk and the groom's dad decided that the first letter of the bride's name should be branded on the groom's as, so that if they get divorced he will always remember and feel guilty about it. So they fetched branding irons, heated them up, pulled the groom's pants down, and Edis branded a massive L on his left cheek. Is having sex with someone who isn't your partner on your bachelorette party normal? What the duck? When the question is what's the worst thing to happen directed at millions of people, yeah, that's going to be a common denominator. I organized the BP for my buddy. He is a cop, so there were lots of cops that got invited. His dad and my dad came for the first half of the night, which was a poker tournament in a large hotel suite. The dads leave when the poker is done and the girls arrive about an hour later. They tell us that there were 2 really drunk guys getting arrested in the lobby and 2 women with them that looked to be in trouble. Me, lawyer, and a few of the cops run down to see what is happening. Yep, the dads met some women in the elevator, picked them up, were trying to book another room and the manager wouldn't rent to them because they were all loaded. They started causing a fuss and the manager called the police. Nobody was arrested. Dads were loaded into a cab and sent home. TLDR, father of the groom and my dad tried to pick up randoms in the hotel lobby and got kicked out of the hotel. Bride passing out at dinner face first into a pizza with white sauce and mushrooms. Bridesmaid woke her up and she lifts her face half covered in cream sauce with a couple mushrooms. She's cleaned up by her friends and I send a busboy to the table because it looks like they spilt water and it's on the floor. Seems the bride relieved herself in her chair but she finished the rest of her pizza. Was a guest, not a worker bullet. I've been to 2 bachelor parties and 1 bachelorette party because I have a friend who is female and she doesn't have a lot of friends and has contact with only her sister in terms of family. Turns out an Asian girl having the gal to marry a black man is not well liked by her family. The bachelor parties were almost boring. Some drinks. A stripper who wasn't really that into the whole thing. She looked so ducking bored I felt bad for her. And this was the only bachelor party that had a stripper. The second party consisted of 7 guys drinking beer soda and taking bets on how long the bride and groom last on their wedding night. Bachelorette party ended in bloodshed when the bride-to-be's sister got into a fight with an uninvited guest and decided it was a good idea to use the glass pitcher full of alcoholic punch as a makeshift battering ram. I will never underestimate Asian women under 5 feet tall again. Not a party. Just a strip club. A few years ago I saw Bonnie Rotten at Sunset Strip outside of Portland. I was standing at the bar when she came out. A minute or 2 into her dance she started walking around the pole going apeshit on her clit and squirting all over the people sitting at the rack. I couldn't believe my eyes. I also couldn't believe the cheers and how people didn't get up and run. Edit. Bonnie Rotten. Not Rachel Rotten. In the long ago I was a male stripper. The last gig I ever did was a bachelorette party where one of the girls bit my right nipple so hard she did some kind of nerve damage to it. I have almost no sensation in it to this day. Honestly, I'm lucky she didn't bite it off. Was a guest groomsman. We went to lodge that was owned by a friend and proceeded to drink. The groom has the idea to take the 6-seater ATV for a spin around the property. So a couple of us go along because he knows the property well. The first lap goes well. So we go for another with 5 people total. A corner gets taken a bit too fast and a bit too sharp and tips over, breaking the best man's ankle. The groom got arrested and an ally and the best man had to have surgery and rode a scooter for the wedding. Found out later the place where the ATV landed was about a foot or so away from a 15-foot drop. I'm going to steal my friend's story. His group of hometown friends are sci-fi nerds. And the groom was a RSTTNG fan. So his buddies dressed up like Klingons and kidnapped him. They took him to a warehouse and had him do some feats of bravery with those Klingon bow swords. Anyhow, my buddy wound up getting stabbed through the hand with a steak knife and had to go to the ER in full Klingon garb. Full stop. Had a bucks night at my bar. Groom got way too wasted. Refused to leave. Me and security guard walk him out with his arms behind his back in that painful security guard hold. I'm not security. So probably only one arm was painful. I was just holding on really. A Shad decides to trip himself over on purpose in a futile attempt to stay. We fall with him. Our entire weight pushing his arms in directions they should never go. Broke one arm. Dislocated the other. Broke his nose. Bride calls the next day furious. Expectedly. Screaming about lawsuits and such. We sent her the footage. Including his several attempts at groping various women. I don't think they went ahead with the wedding. I formerly bartended and the weekly frequency with which I saw brides grooms to be making out with someone who was not their intended pretty much stripped me of my faith in humanity. I went to a comedy club on a date. There by coincidence. I saw a group of girls celebrating. After the first act, the host calls the girl and takes her to the middle of the stage. So she is all excited and all of a sudden a man dressed as Darth Vader comes out dancing. He was really skinny. When he takes his mask off, it's a local celebrity. He would appear in a late night talk show because he was particularly ugly. As he strips he goes all the way to his thighty whitey. Then he rips them off and reveals a white G-string. He then shakes his hips so much I got a glimpse of his gonads. Can't imagine how she felt but she was horrified. Worst girlfriends ever. Still, it was a fun date for me. I used to work running adult jumping castles for Bucks Parties Act. Some got kinda wild with people jump off the roof into the jumping castle on the one I went to be show for training. The one that grossed me out was a stripper showed up and as she got into her act and got her gear off it was revealed that she had a lollipop up there. When the buck was presented with this view, the buck, without missing a beat, grabbed it and put it straight in his mouth. Found out from someone he worked with that on Monday at work he had a very impressive breakout of herpes all around his mouth. Group of girls came into the all-male strip club. Plastered and screaming and shoving bills every which way. They left and came back in a few minutes later. Bride hysterically crying yet on a rampage. The maid of honor had accidentally given the strippers the $700 they needed to pay for the limo. So they were stranded. I was a wine guide in Southern California. We had a bachelorette party of something like 13 21-year-olds. I got kicked out of the first wineries for being too loud. On my way to drop them off I got pulled over by the highway patrol because they were pressing their asses against the van window and flashing the officer. I came away without a ticket and a pretty funny exchange between the cop and, also a young guy in his 20s, gave me a thumbs up. When I got back to the office to drop the van off there were as prints on the windows. My boss laughed. Duck, that was a long day. Like herding cats. Former co-worker of mine was a dancer at a bachelor party. She was good looking and sweet as can be. So this guy and his bros come in and they want the usual. At some point this guy goes to a private room with my co-worker and instead of doing what you'd expect the guy breaks down and confesses he's only marrying this woman because she threatened to kill him if he didn't. He tried to call the cops numerous times but no one listened to him and she beat the hell out of him when he said anything. So she basically ends up spending the whole time comforting this guy who's having an emotional breakdown over having to get married. She quit dancing after that.